Welcome back, Internet, to another episode of Makers on Tap, the podcast where makerspace directors drink, talk about making stuff, maker culture. Tonight, I have with me... Oh, I'm Joe, and I have with me...
Aaron.
And Chris.
And Adam.
All right. Aaron, what are you drinking?
I have some Elysian Space Dust IPA.
Good old space dust. Adam, what are you drinking?
I'm lame and I'm drinking water.
That's okay.
You don't have to worry because I am also drinking water.
Water comes from a tap too. It's fine.
This is true. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I am drinking, and I totally want to give a shout out to my new favorite drink. You guys can see it on my webcam. The world can't, though. Hop tea, which is the tea of the beer drinkers. It is tea brewed with hops and comes in 4 or 5 different varieties. Tonight I am drinking the calm one. It has no caffeine. It's brewed with chamomile, and it tastes like, I don't know, it's heaven. It's so good.
Oh, man. Between the chamomile and the alcohol, like, that's got to just put you right out.
There's no alcohol. That's the best part about this. It's just water and hops. So
you've talked about this before, and it's where do you get that from? Because I haven't
the
gone
website or Whole Foods.
Whole Foods. Oh,
yeah.
Didn't we lose our Whole Foods?
We never had a Whole Foods. We had a Fresh Market because Peoria sucks. But you can get it from hoptea.com. You can also order it on Amazon. It's super good.
Wait, you can order alcohol on Amazon?
There's no alcohol.
Oh,
no alcohol. It's alcohol free. And the ingredients are carbonated water, chamomile, flowers, and hops. Gluten-free, non-GMO. But they have 70 milligrams of caffeine. I don't know. The highest one is like a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And then they like step down to no caffeine. And they also have a hoppiness level, which is whoa, really, quite, kinda, and wee bit. And the really hoppy one, it tastes like drinking a straight up, super sharp, fresh IPA. It's great.
Fair enough.
I'm on the opposite end. I generally don't actually like beer, but I enjoy tea thoroughly. Iced tea, more so than anything. I'm weird. I don't like hot drinks, but that I might actually try.
Yeah, it's carbonated and awesome. My wife hates beer, and she loves all of these. So
interesting.
She just bought 2 cases because I bought 1 case and wouldn't share with her. So,
I have been drinking.
Do
a
they
lot
make
of
it in
White
like a
Claw.
nice Irish breakfast tea, something to wake you up in the morning?
The really hoppy one is black tea. They have a green tea, a white tea, chamomile, and then they have a special edition that they just released that's supposed to be like holy shit hops. And I want to order it real bad, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. Anyway, shout out to Hop Tea. Maybe you should sponsor us. Totally gonna tag them in social media after we release this.
You should. We talked about them for a solid 2 minutes now.
I am to sell it more. I am looking it up, and I think I'm going to order a case tonight. So you have sold me at least.
They're great, man. Yeah. All right. So, Adam, why are you here? Who are you? What do you do?
I don't know, because I was talking to you online the other day, and you said that you should be on the podcast, and I said, sure. I've been told that I know things about making things, apparently. I mean, if you want the bio background, let's see. I've been an engineering nerd for a long time. Since 2013, I've run a company called Maniacal Labs with a buddy of mine. We make open source electronics of a variety of sorts. Started out with a lot of LED control stuff, which we actually still sell to this day. Oddly enough, our first product, well, I guess it was technically our second product, but our first product that we actually sold any of is just still going strong 6 years later. It's called the All Pixel. It's a USB to any different type of digital LED strip control board. So it's basically a universal translator. So you just send it raw RGB bytes and it figures it out and sends it off to the strip.
That's neat.
lately we've kind of branched out into other things. We've got the Engravinator, which I released at East Coast Rep Festival last year. A little mini diode laser engraver that you're meant to just sort of bring to the material and stick on there and engrave your logo or whatever. I also, currently work for Lightburn, the premier laser control software solution.
The only laser control
Yeah, the
software.
only one. We're slowly working towards the world domination, of course. I used to work for Red Hat. Yeah, big into the open source thing. It's kind of actually still weird to me that I left Red Hat because the gods of open source.
Yeah.
But Lightburn's too cool not to work on. I get to play with lasers every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to complain. So, yeah, that's me. I don't know. I build lots of crazy stuff. See, this is gonna be terrible because no one's gonna be able to see it, but except for you guys. I built this today between lunch and dinner, which is fun.
Just a little.
It's an RGB clock that's made out of just stacked acrylic and some 7-segment RGB LED modules that I found on Tindy.
Did you laser cut the acrylic?
Of course I did.
Okay. Well, if you got it on Tendy, you may have been supporting somebody else's kit. I don't know.
No, this was the Tindy blog like 3 or 4 weeks ago posted about it because they'll post like new products and stuff. And it was the Cyber Digit. It's 21 WS2812 LEDs on a like 40 by 80 millimeter PCB set up in a 7-segment arrangement. And it just looked really cool. I mean, not something I couldn't build myself. I've done plenty of my own circuit boards and such, but I like supporting other open source makers and whatnot. So I picked up a box full of them with no real specific plan on what to do with them.
As you do.
But then today I just sort of got into that mood that I do every once in a while where like I've been working on this. Well, Joe knows about my giant plotter that I've been working on for weeks. But then every once in a while I just need to do a 1-day build. Just a palette cleanser. So I'm not like just constantly working on the same damn thing every day.
Yeah.
I like that term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I really should do more of them. Like, I always love watching Adam Savage's 1-day builds on YouTube.
Totally.
Those are fantastic. I mean, granted, he admits they're never 1 day. But,
Well, it's never 1 day when you add cameras in. That's always the thing.
And that's like, I was telling you, Joe, about this the other day. Like, I wish I was the type of person that could record this stuff. I can't bring myself to spend the time to set up a camera. If someone wanted to follow me around, I would gladly let them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to do it.
What city do you live out of?
I live in Raleigh, so you must be the videographer guy that Joe was talking about.
Yes,
It was mentioned.
I've done good amount of years of videography, broadcast support, and all that kind of fun stuff. So
Nice.
I enjoy doing it. Weirdly enough, I love doing video work.
Yeah, the only time I ever do video content anymore, which is funny because the Maniacal Labs YouTube channel, which like not that we put a lot of work into it, but we've had for 6 or 7 years now. Just the other day, I got an email. It's like, you have 1,000 subscribers. It's like, yay? I get. It's not like really, it's like I said, it's been years, so it's not that huge of a thing. But yeah, usually if I do video content, it's like me doing a screen recording of showing how I do something. Like I just had one of those the other day. I did a little just 3D printing trick, which actually got posted on Hackaday, which was kind of cool. Which I think that's why we have 1,000 subscribers now, because we gained like 70 in a week or something like that. But
Right.
Not
Fair
quite
enough,
influencer level, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So real quick, you mentioned Tendy, and Tendy is something that like I don't think never gets enough attention. Do you want
It
to
does not.
Do you want to describe that real quick?
Yeah,
So I don't think we've ever talked about it on the show.
Okay, so Tindy, the best way I can describe it is it's Etsy for electronics. Most people know what Etsy is. It's just a way of getting eyes in front of the work of just like small batch makers, basically. I mean, there's some people on there that sell a ton, but like I know a handful of the people that work at Tindy, and I have been told by them on a number of occasions that we sell far more than most people, which is not a lot.
Yeah. But there's some neat stuff on Tindy.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff. And like, I think someone gave me the number once that about 50% of all items on Tindy have never sold anything.
Oh, wow.
Huh. Wow.
Because it's really, really niche. And I mean, probably about 50% of the stuff that we've posted on there is the same. And yeah, most of it is stuff, like you'll see a ton of stuff on there that people have clearly made via getting the PCBs from OSH Park.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the Osh Park Purple, obviously, and, you know, maybe they reflowed them at home in their toaster oven or whatever. I mean, they're very, very small batches. We're probably one of the more oddities in that, like, I actually have the PCBs manufactured by Seed. But basically, yeah, it's a marketplace. They facilitate the credit card processing and all of that stuff. You get an email about the order and then you ship it out.
Yeah.
And that's it. And we do sometimes a handful of sales a week, sometimes none. It's been a lot less lately. Just because, you know, the world right now. But, and yeah, we've got everything on there from an $8 little Raspberry Pi hat that just is basically just an easy breakout with level shifting for hooking up digital LED strips, to kits for the Engravinator, which are, you know, $400. So it's kind of across the board, depending upon what you want. And other people are the same way. They've got all sorts of different things.
Yeah. What's your favorite project that's not one of yours that you've seen on there?
Oh, that I've seen on there. Oh my God. There's so many. I mean, it's going to be. I haven't mentioned this before. One of my favorite projects of all times are always clocks of some sort. I mean, I just showed you a clock that I made. I have this weird obsession with them. Probably one of my all-time favorites was just. I mean, not that it's a uncommon thing, but it was a really cool analog meter clock.
Okay.
That this guy had made, and it had not only analog meters, but like Numatron tubes included in it for some of the digits. I don't know if you know what a Numatron tube is.
No. I've never heard of it.
It's like someone wanted to have Nixie tubes, but didn't have the technology or the skill. And just were like, an incandescent light bulb is good enough, right? So, a Numatron, if you look at Numatron tubes, they usually come in like a 7-segment variety. And it's literally just, instead of 7 LEDs, it's 7 incandescent filaments.
Okay.
But they run at like 3 volts. So you don't have to deal with like, you know, the crazy like 180 volt, you know, driving of a Nixie tube or anything like that. But then they also have the same problem of they're an incandescent light bulb, so they can blow out. But they're just amazingly cool. I wish I could remember who it was that made it, but it was just this like really cool retro style, you know, clock. And there are some on there like that where clearly they're making them one at a time and they're like $400 or $500 a piece. And I really want one, but I can't really warrant spending that much money on it, especially when I've got all my own projects. So yeah, that's probably it.
I think my favorite one is the Lixie clock.
Oh, those are cool. And I've wanted to make those. I've wanted to make one. I just haven't gotten around to it.
The only thing that's holding me back is buying the PCBs from him was expensive, as it should be. But there was a point in time when a whole bunch of friends and I were like, we could just bulk order these from like Seed or Dirty PCB and laser cut all the acrylic and like do a makerspace build of these clocks. And then we could throw him some cash as like a donation of like, thank you. Because it's all open source, right?
Yeah, yeah. You just get all the stuff you want. But
yeah, like, I don't know. It never happened. As nothing ever does.
There's always too many projects. I mean, again, pointing out visual things. You see the giant, massive shelves behind me. That's all ongoing or in storage projects of some sort. Well, maybe at the very end, it's shipping stuff for Maniacal Labs, but most of it is all project storage of some kind or another. Something that either I plan on working on or am working on, or, you know, I get around to them eventually.
No, absolutely.
Oh, that was why we didn't just buy them. He doesn't have them in stock ever.
Oh, well, that's always good. Yeah, there's a lot of that too. People will put something up and they make them, you know, they make 10 or 20 and they sell out and then they never make any more, which I don't blame them. I've had products up there where it's like we made 50 and it took 4 years to sell them.
Right.
Like, probably one of my biggest failures ever, I don't mind talking about, was the Super 7 segment display that I made, like 3-4 years ago. And it really started as an exercise in how many 7-segment digits can I drive with a single ATmega 328? The answer is 12.
Fair enough.
Yeah. They're multiplexed like crazy, and I only had enough I.O. left to have a single serial input and a single serial output. And that was it. And what I actually did was I made them so they're chainable. So you can have the 12 digits. And the way you control them is literally just send ASCII text in, and it will display that however it can. If you send more than 12 digit or characters, it just sends it on to the next one, assuming that one's hooked up.
Neat.
I thought it was a great idea. My drawer full of them says it was not a great idea. But, you know, you'll learn. We made I think we made 100 kits, which was a terrible idea. But you gotta try it.
Right. Live and let learn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, well, that's been one of your quotes failures. What has been something that you feel was a great success that you were able to do?
Oh, God. I mean, the biggest commercial success we had was the All Pixel that I mentioned, the LED controller. We still... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we still sell them very frequently on Tindy. We also, and I can't say to who, but we sell a lot of them directly to commercial purchaser who uses them in industrial equipment.
Interesting.
Nice.
I'm still not 100% sure why, but I don't care because they buy a ton of them. So,
yeah,
you know, like stuff like that. I mean, we went to Bay Area Maker Faire a couple of years ago, and that was like our reward to ourselves from a good year of sales. So,
I was gonna ask because I was looking at it. I hadn't seen this before, but man, it looks awesome because so I do a lot of cosplay stuff, and the ability to just have one board that I could plug that into and just be able to control it right from there would be amazing.
Yeah, I think the thing that has almost, if anything, kept it back a little bit is just the fact that it's specifically for controlling them from something that has a USB host capability.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, well, but I want it to run standalone. And we actually went down the road of having some sort of version that you could drop an SD card in there or something like that, and it would just play back animations. I actually designed it. I have the prototype around here somewhere. But it was going to be ungodly expensive to produce in the quantities that we would, and we weren't really sure if it would take off. But where I've seen a lot of people use them is more in static installations and stuff. I've seen a lot. Probably at least 20 different people have sent me pictures or videos of their Burning Man projects that have used it, which is really freaking cool to see. I mean, I have no actual interest in ever going to Burning Man, but I don't like heat that much or the desert. But, you know, it's cool to see at least that some of my work has been there. So yeah, it's probably the one thing that's kind of in some ways it's the selling point of it, but we've had a lot of people say, well, why can't I run it standalone? It's well, it's not meant for that.
You should buy something else to run standalone.
I mean, and the funny thing of it is I don't know how many of you have ever used Fast LED.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're familiar with it? So, yeah, it's, pretty much the only, microcontroller, LED controller library you want to use. And that's all the all pixel's doing. I hacked fast LED a little bit to make it so that I could, instead of at compile time choose what type of LED, I could at runtime choose it. Because they have it all templated out so that like it only compiles in the stuff you need. But I did some weird shenanigans to it to make it so that most of the program runs in 200 bytes of RAM, and it can choose which one it uses, and then it uses the other 2,300 bytes of RAM for LED buffering, because we wanted to support as many LEDs as possible. That's one of those things I always find funny. I love microcontroller programming compared to, desktop stuff, because I'll have people ask me questions like, well, how do you know it's only 200 bytes of RAM? It's, well, I counted. You can do that. And I had to dive into fast LED because there was stuff there that I wasn't normally controlling, but it's like, well, I know. And it's not actually 200. I think it's like 187, but it's around that. And yeah, you can just count, as opposed to like desktop programming, which, don't get me wrong, I love, but it's like, oh yeah, it's using 2 gigs of RAM. That's probably fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm diving into PLC programming now.
Mm-hmm.
For my money job. And I'm just blown away with the differentiation between how they handle memory usage and variables and things like that in an industrial controller that just runs screaming fast with an insane scan rate versus like what we would run on an Arduino, and I don't know, be just like, you can't. They're just like, everything's global. I want to be able to see it everywhere all the time, constantly.
And actually, you say that, but it's funny because I've worked mostly in commercial back-end applications has been most of my career, with a few small exceptions. And it's like when I was at Red Hat, I worked on the system that built OpenShift, which is their container platform, which I won't get into exactly what that is if you don't know what it is. But, it was just back-end tools. So as long as it ran and as long as the builds happened, no one cared. It was written in Python. I have no idea how much RAM it used. It used an amount that was acceptable. But it just worked. Whereas working on Lightburn now, I love, because it's closer to microcontroller programming, because Jason, the creator of it, is very, very OCD in a very good way, as far as I'm concerned, about everything needs to run fast.
Yes.
And I think it's why everyone loves Lightburn, is because it's stupid fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever imported a giant DXF and watched it redraw? Move it around and it's just like, what? And it's like, that's so refreshing compared to RDWorks.
Yeah. Well, there was a time, I don't know, almost a year ago, where someone was saying, oh, no, you should use LaserWeb or whatever. And Jason said, well, but it's, 1,000 times faster. Kind of just joking, just pulling a number out of thin air. And then he's like, let me check. Literally, thousands of times faster, depending upon what you're doing. He had a large vector file that took 23 seconds to load in LaserWeb, and it took less than 50 milliseconds or something like that.
Yeah.
To load in it's just, it's funny. I despite the fact that everything is moving towards web development, I am one of those weird old fogies that I'm like, no, I'm not moving to the web. I'm never doing that. Because it's slow.
Come.
It's great.
Join us.
Yeah, I know. Okay, yeah, well, you're one of those people. But yeah, it's great for having cross-platform ability. Hell, my day-to-day IDE is VS Code, which is basically running in Chrome, and I get that. And I get that it can work. It's just, I don't know, something about just straight desktop programming that's just better to me.
I get it.
Yeah,
but there's always a time when 512 meg was all we'll ever need in a computer,
or 640K or something like that.
Yeah, 64K.
Yeah. So I get both sides.
Yeah,
and it comes down to RAM is cheap now.
Yeah,
so it's free real estate.
Yeah, my laptop that I'm recording this on right now has 48 gigs of RAM. because I could.
Yeah.
Yep. Yup.
But then you run into those weird applications like that, the string art bot that you sent me the other night, Adam, that Bart During posted on his YouTube channel, and he's like, you really need 32 gigs of RAM to compile the image properly. And I was just like, I've never needed 32 gigs of RAM for anything, let alone to make a picture.
Or not for not for one single application.
Yes.
Yeah, you can break it up. The only time that I've ever needed it before, and I don't do this as much now, but I used to do a lot of high resolution stitched together panoramas. So like, you know, like 40 to 100 individual images stitched together into a multi-hundred megabit or megapixel photo. And that you needed at least like 32 gigs of RAM to do the stitching. I'd either use Photoshop or a tool called Huggin. And honestly,
did you ever use the Rasterbator?
No, that sounds weird.
Oh man, it was such a cool tool. I'll dive down that rabbit hole in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, fair. But yeah, I'd use that, and that one, like, it would legitimately need it. I remember at the time I actually I worked for a company called Alien Skin Software, which did Photoshop plugins, and I had this one really giant panorama I wanted to stitch, and I could not get my computer at home to do it, so I did it on my dual Xeon Mac Pro workstation at work one lunch, and it was because I needed like 64 gigs of RAM to make it actually go through and work.
Yeah, I was talking to Brendan from Brendan Builds a couple months ago when he was rebuilding his latest PC. He has a AMD Threadripper build.
Nice.
He's got like 64 cores and like 128 gigs of RAM because he does like software consultancy, and he does a lot of cross compiling. And I'm like, I just genuinely wish I had the use case to build a PC like that, because I just don't.
Yeah, that's a very specific workload.
Yeah,
I mean, like, my computer's got, I think it's 6 core with hyperthreading, so like, 12 threads, whatever. And that's generally pretty good for what I'm doing. Mind you, like, my main computer that I use is actually a laptop, but it's a beefy MFer. It's,
You can cuss here, it's fine.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
We gave up on that ship a long time ago.
I wasn't sure.
You
good.
We sank that fucking ship.
Okay.
With all the F-bombs.
But yeah, it's like a long time ago, because like for my laptop, I mean, I want it to be portable, but I don't really care that it doesn't weigh 10 pounds. I just want to be able to move it from my desk. So like I have this giant ThinkPad that just has all of the specs. I think it has 3 hard drive bays, which is just stupid.
damn.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
I had to reinstall the OS the other day just because I installed a bigger hard drive. And it was great because I just moved my main hard drive to the other slot and then put the new one in. And now I can actually go back and forth between them. Because like, I didn't want to like blow it away. I almost never do that because I'll usually forget to back something up. But yeah. So
the Rasterbator, I posted a link in chat, and I'll share it on the Twitters. I don't remember when this came up. I was making posters with this in my apartments, like long before I was married, so like probably 2004.
Oh, interesting.
But you dump in a picture, it enlarges it to multiple pages that you can then print out or send and get printed. And it's they used to have a desktop version, which doesn't appear they have those anymore. But man, it's so cool.
I like under the about it starts with the scourge of university IT paper consumption worldwide.
Yes. But my favorite was I would wait until like Shutterfly or one of those photo places would have 100 4x6 prints for $1.
Nice.
And then I would do wall art out of 4x6s on like foam core insulation. And, for like $4, I had this like museum quality poster that was the size of my couch. And it was super fun.
That's awesome.
the neat thing about this is it blows everything out into dots because it's a raster image, and you can change the size of the dots, so you can really stylize your photos, or you can make the dots super tiny and get a photo quality image, and it just depends on what you want to print out.
Well, but it's also that kind. I always like that where it's like, if you're up close, it doesn't really look like much, but then if you stand back far and squint, then it actually looks like something.
Yes.
You know, pixelized
Goddamn
art.
sailboat! Yes! Yes! Everybody laughed. Good.
Nice.
Oh man.
Anyway. So
what was working at Red Hat like?
It was interesting. So I started there in 2015. Yeah, December 2015. I left March of this year to work for Lightburn. I kind of bounced around there. I always worked on back-end stuff. I've literally Lightburn and then that other job, Alien Skin, is the only time I've ever actually shipped a product or written code that went into a product that shipped. When I was at Red Hat, I literally shipped the product. That was my job, was to build it and ship it. Red Hat is one of the weirdest fucking places in the most amazing way. For one, like, if you're at all used to, like, kind of being around the open source community, there's just people there that all of a sudden you're like, wait, that guy works here? Like, one of the founders of the Apache organization worked there. And he was the weirdest dude. He'd walk around in a kilt with a bullwhip and, like, had the glasses on with all the little magnifiers that went down in front of him.
I'm so about this.
And he was like the archetype, like, gray beard. I mean, just huge gray beard, and just you looked at him and you're like, you know things about Unix that no one else knows. You just knew that inherently.
He's forgotten more than you'll ever know.
Exactly, yeah. And Red Hat is the kind of place which, even though, I don't work there anymore, I think it was a great experience. It was humbling because it's the type of place that you go to realize that you're not as smart as you think you are. Because there are people there that just, again, understand more than you will ever forget.
yeah.
And are like really deep in it. Because, like, I love open source and I love Linux and it's great, but I will never love Linux as much as some of the people that work there. And, that's fine. I mean, I guess it's no fault of my own. It's just, I'm running this on Windows right now, and that's what I develop in for my day job now. I'm fine. I'm not like, no, I will never do anything but Linux. There was one guy that sat next to me there, and I had this old piece of junk, like, it was already 5 years old when I gave it to him, laptop, that was like Chromebook level hardware when I bought it new for $120.
Okay.
I don't even remember why I bought it, but it was just this piece of junk. And at one point I was like, I should put Linux on this because it would probably run better. Because, like, it ran Windows 10, but it only had a 32 gig hard drive and it was, like, soldered to the motherboard. So, like, there was no upgrading it or whatever.
Oh, that was.
And I was like, yeah, it was. It was basically a Chromebook that they were like, no, fuck it, we're putting Windows on, and we're like, which didn't make any sense. Like, and I'm pretty sure that they actually sold the same exact hardware as a Chromebook, which would have made way more sense. Yeah. But it only had 2 gigs of RAM. It just didn't really work. Like, it was weird. Again, it only had 2 gigs of RAM, but, like, the drivers that came with it didn't work unless they were 64-bit. But if you installed 64-bit, it took up twice as much hard drive space. But anyways, there was a guy who's a friend of mine now and sat right next to me. And I was like, Vincent, do you want this? And because he's got 3 kids, I think. And I was figuring one of his kids could use it. He's like, oh, yeah, sure. And he took it. And, like, a day later, he goes, I forgot to preface this with, I tried Linux on it, but the touchpad wouldn't work on it.
Okay.
Just no distribution could work. I went through all the forums and people were like, oh, yeah, in this version of the kernel, it works. This guy, literally a day later, is like, yeah, so I got the touchpad working. I was like, how? He goes, well, I patched the kernel. I pushed it up to mainstream now. And I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm no stranger to doing, open source contributions although admittedly, like I'm one of those weirds, like I have a lot of open source projects myself, and I've contributed to those far more than I have to like other people's projects. It's just they're kind of the things I'm passionate about. But he was just like, oh yeah, I found the bug, I patched it in the kernel, I'm running that now, and the next kernel release it'll be in there. So now that laptop works because I gave it to this one dude that I sat next to at Red Hat. It's just that's the kind of place it was. It was really great. I mean, things did change a little bit when IBM bought us. Not totally, but you could sort of start seeing that influence. Even though I didn't work there at the time, I was kind of sad when I heard that Jim Whitehurst, who was the CEO the entire time I was there, left because he was really cool dude. Really, really got the open source. I mean, he didn't leave. He just works for IBM now, and they own Red Hat, so whatever. But they quarterly would have a thing at the Lincoln Theater across the street from the Red Hat building, which I just realized that none of you are from this area and have any idea what the Lincoln Theater is. The Lincoln Theater is basically like a dive bar concert venue.
Okay.
It should not be like allowed to still be standing. I'm actually not sure why it's still standing. It looks like it's halfway to being condemned, but it's a cool place. It's been around forever. And they would always like rent it out every quarter, and they'd have free beer and snacks, and they would do a quarterly like internal thing that they called the show, which was just like a video about like stuff going on around the world, and like there'd always be like some very heavily produced video about some cool open source project. And that was always fun. So it's just, and I have a ton of friends still from there. I talk to them all the time. We play board games at lunch over Tabletop Simulator. Like nice. 2 or 3 days a week still. So it was a cool place. But I'm not sad that I left to work for Lightburn. And I'm not, Jason, if you're listening, I'm not just saying that. I do actually thoroughly enjoy working on laser stuff. So
I don't know how you couldn't. I would love it.
No, I mean, and that was a weird thing to fall into because like I briefly met Jason in 2018, I think, at the New York City Maker Faire. But then I went back to Bay Area Maker Faire last year, and we got hanging out there. And then when I came home from there, I happened to be on the forum, and I saw someone complaining about the installer for Linux. And I was like, hey, like, I know Qt, I know Linux. Like, do you want a hand? And I started doing the Linux installer, and then it just sort of snowballed from there. And then several months later, it was like, what would you think about doing this full time? So, yes. Yeah. But yeah, that was Red Hat. It was fun.
I'm glad that your open source company experience was much less harrowing than mine was.
Oh yeah, you worked for Lulzbot, right? Yeah. Well, okay. See, and I have a weird bit of experience on both sides of this. That was open source hardware.
Yes,
and I know that like they did Cura and stuff. Although I don't remember where Cura started. Was it at Lulzbot?
It started at Ultimate
Libre.
Okay, right.
Lulzbot was hardcore Libre, which is a bit more hardcore than
See, that was the funny thing too about about Red Hat was the only kind of place that you can think of where like not only do people get feisty about whether or not something's open source, they get feisty about which open source it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Hardcore,
much more feisty about just whether or not it's open or not. Like, people will defend their chosen license to the death.
Oh, totally. And actually, a funny aside, this is back to the Red Hat side of things. So, Red Hat was very big on open communication amongst everyone. To the point where everyone, like, when you started, and I think you technically could unsubscribe from it, but I'm not sure I ever figured out how. There's, like, a whole bunch of internal mailing lists, and anyone can get on any of them. But everyone is subscribed to Memo List. And it's literally, if you send an email to that, it goes to everyone in the company. And Memo List was a hot dumpster fire most of the time. Because of things like that. Like, I mean, if you think about it, these are people that will literally argue almost to, like, physical altercations over what type of open source something is.
Yeah.
And they would get into some argument about whatever. And it was all in good fun. And most of the time, no one was, worse for wear at the end of it. But yeah, it was really interesting to have that. Just most of the time I would ignore it, but even still, sometimes stuff would pop up, and you get into these like 1,000 email threads about something.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That stuff didn't happen at Allspot.
But my point was, you're talking about open source hardware, which is like, even to this day, is still kind of an iffy, like, what does open hardware even mean?
Yes. Like, that's a whole discussion. Like, what is it to you?
I've literally given entire talks on it at conferences.
What is open hardware to you?
Open hardware to me is effectively the same thing. It's just, the problem is that most of the licenses don't really cover it correctly, because you're talking about a physical thing. But to me, it is, you have everything you would possibly need to recreate that physical object. You may not necessarily have the means to do it.
Yes.
But you have everything going into it that you could. For example, there will be a lot of times where people are like, this is an open source hardware design, for PCB, and they give you the schematic. That is wrong. Or, one of my biggest pet peeves is people say that designs on Thingiverse are open source. And I'm so OCD about this that I literally got kicked off their API because I scraped the entire site to do the data analysis of... Basically what I did was I looked at every single object on Thingiverse and got the information about what licenses it listed as and what files do they provide. And a solid, I think, 83% did not comply with open source standards because they would provide an STL file.
Right.
Which is that, as I like to describe it to people that maybe don't understand those or who are more used to software, that's like providing the binary and saying this is open source.
Yes.
I mean,
you've got all the ones and zeros, man.
What
are you doing? You've got all your ones and zeros right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
just
yes,
read it, you
I
dummy.
have the thing now and I can print it, but and yes, you can modify an STL. Don't give me that bullshit.
No, you can't. Not in any meaningful way. Fuck it.
Exactly. Like, yes, in Fusion 360, I can import a mesh and it technically works, but it's a fucking pain in the ass.
It's a dumpster fire is what it is.
Yeah. Whereas, I love websites like GrabCAD, where I can just, for that clock that I designed, I was like, oh, I need a step file for the Node MCU ESP32 microcontroller. 30 seconds later, I had that imported into Fusion 360. I had it exact. Everything was good. I mean, I still verified the dimensions with my calipers and, I'm trying to make sure that I had the right one. But you can grab that, the step file I can modify, everything's fine. And I think, a lot of, at the very least, provide the step file if you're saying it's open source, open source objects, not even necessarily open source hardware. Because I think when people say hardware, they mean electronics. But then it covers more than that. Like the Engravinator, which is, the little diode laser engraver, that is truly covering open source hardware in that the electronics in it are open source, the design of the physical hardware is open source, all the 3D printed stuff, everything. And I actually went through the frickin' pain in the ass of exporting every single thing as both an STL and a step file so that you would have it. I was really tempted to just be like, look, here's the Fusion 360 file for the entire thing.
You should do that. You should just do that.
That's what I'm doing on the plotter. I'm going to release that, but it's going to be like, look, here's the Fusion 360 file. There's 150 different parts in here. You deal with it.
The nice thing is...
That's where I land.
Fusion's web interface makes dumping out multiple file types really fast. Because you can just click the drop down, save it as this, save it as that, and go.
I don't even do that from within Fusion on the desktop, though, too.
Yeah, it's not as quick to do everything. Whereas the web interface just gives you a list format of all the parts, and you just boop boop boop. And
I have heavily considered writing, because I've written a couple of Fusion 360 plugins. I have considered writing a plugin that basically just will export every subcomponent as a step file.
Can you do that? Can you do that?
Okay, maybe. I mean. Yeah, just because, as long as, you'd have to make sure that you organize it correctly so that, it exports the right things, but
yeah,
it's just, the Engravinator is not bad. I think there's only, 40 separate parts on it or something like that, but it was still just a frickin' pain in the ass to, go through and export every single one. And sometimes I'd be like, I think I only changed these 3 parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But did I? So I should just do them all again.
Yeah.
Which, they really just need to have that where you just look, export every component. But a plugin for that probably wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. Steps and STLs. Every component.
Yeah, exactly. Just every single one by the name that they are.
Yep. Dump it into a folder. Batch it for me.
That would also force me to not do the terrible sin of having like 16 different bodies in a single component and not breaking them out. I know. Sorry, Joe.
Jesus.
Well, I usually don't. It's just sometimes I'm lazy.
Bodies don't have information attached to them, though, other than the timeline, and you can break that so easy. And
I know, and usually I kick myself when I'm like, I have to go back and go, oh, crap.
Yep.
I can't do. Or usually if I'm like, oh, I should actually do like joints on these so that everything moves together nicely. And then I realize that you can't put joints on individual bodies. You have to put them in components, and I didn't design them in components.
Yep. But you can't make... Yeah, just do it right from the beginning. So, along that same line, though, I've been in discussion with people about open source hardware, and they fought tooth and nail that you have to release not only your BOM, but your sources and your price list to comply with open source licensing. And I think that's crap.
I would agree. It's been a while, so I can't cite anything specifically, but I have read through like every open hardware license ad nauseum, as well as like the open source, compliance and all of that stuff. And BOM, yes.
BOM for sure. So
absolutely.
You need that to recreate it.
Yes.
Sources, maybe.
List?
But you don't need sources, maybe. If it's a hard to find component that's like very specific, it's nice to know where they got it. But
well, I mean, if it's something that you designed, yes.
Yeah.
Like if it's a PCB that you designed that's part of the thing, then yes, you need to release all of that. But if it's something that you bought from someone else, then just link out to whatever they'd have.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. I mean, I have multiple things now that are open source hardware certified, and they don't have full price lists for things.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I could give you the OSHW IDs, and they don't have them all. Which actually, going back to the Tindy thing, that's one of the other interesting things. If you ever want to sell anything on Tindy and are cool with it, and it's not hard, get your item open source hardware certified, because those show up higher in the lists on Tindy if you link it to the open source hardware ID.
Okay.
At least so I've been told, and so I've seen from what it is.
Interesting.
So
that makes perfect sense.
It's fun. I actually did like 4 things at once recently, so I have 4 completely consecutive open source hardware IDs.
Nice.
Those items span like 5 years of development, but I just didn't get around to them until I did the Engravinator. Then I was just like, fine, I'll just do everything that I've had from the last couple of years.
Yeah. That's fun. I feel like I'm
so what are your thoughts on like, was it copyright? You can't have copyright or a patent on hardware. So what's the actual point of an open source hardware license?
I mean, the license defines what you can do with it. So the thing of it is to me, copyright is more, and granted, obviously preface this, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but to me, copyright is basically saying, I am the one who owns like the name or the like, what it looks like. I guess that's really more trademark. Like, for example, there is nothing that keeps anyone from mass producing the All Pixel and selling them. I would be flattered if they did that. you see all the Arduino Pro Micro clones, which is like, the Pro Micro's Spark Fun version of Arduino. And there's a million clones of them for $2 on eBay. I totally haven't ever bought any of those. But like, I feel like that's when you've made it, when, China is cloning them for $3 online or whatever. And that's fine. And like, no one could do anything about that. What I could go after them for is if they called it the All Pixel.
Yeah.
That's the copyright to it. I mean, mind you, I don't have that name actually trademarked or copyrighted or anything like that. But they, and like, I also have a 2-axis laser controller board called the Platypus, and I have a logo on the back of that, and they can't take that logo. They would have to take that off, but they could otherwise wholesale copy the board, and that's fine. Then when it comes to the patent sides, that's, you're trying to protect intellectual property. I have great issues when it comes to, current U.S. IP law and hardware. Yeah. Well, and honestly, more so software, because like patenting software, I think is just a moot point. It's where like it kind of depends on what it is. Like Red Hat patents a lot of software, but they do it so that no one can sue anyone else for using it. Like they're doing it to protect not only themselves but everyone else, because it is open source. But like patenting closed source software doesn't generally make a lot of sense to me. Especially if it's proprietary and it's not open source, you would have to reverse engineer it or whatever. But then even when it comes to hardware, it's just, I don't know. It makes sense in certain cases, but like electronics and whatnot, like that stuff moves so fast that someone's going to clone it and someone's going to find some weird loophole around it because they're going to do it in a slightly different way. And patent law hasn't kept up with being able to say, oh, yeah, this is for sure the exact same PCB or whatever as what this other guy made. It just, I don't know. That didn't go as well as I thought it would. In general, I don't like patents or any of that stuff when it comes to hardware. But
yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm the same. Especially when you have to defend a patent in multiple countries.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes,
ain't no one got time for that.
Yeah, it becomes a war of who's got more money to pay more legal teams.
It does, and a lot of patents these days are predatory.
Yeah,
they're people get them for the express purpose of suing other people for infringing on their patents, and it's just like, just come out with something that's better than the other guy. Yes, eventually someone will end up doing basically the same thing, but that's going to happen with everything. Mm-hmm. And also, like, I mean, a great example of patents being a hindrance to just society and the world as a whole is the patent expiring on 3D printer technology on FDM. Like, think of if that had expired 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
Where we would be with 3D printers. Like, the amount of progress that's been made in the last 12 years since that patent expired is just absolutely freaking insane. And if we had another 10 or even 5 years on that, we'd be even further because, printers are really fucking good these days.
Yeah.
Yes, they're not what MakerBot and all those companies were spouting at the beginning, that everyone's going to have a 3D printer in their kitchen and they're just going to print everything. But they're getting there where, like, I have a Prusa Mini that was $350 and it's a really good printer. It just works.
Yeah.
They're a long way off from the $2,000 printer I had way back in the day, which was a piece of crap in hindsight.
Really makes you mad, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, for the time, it was amazing. It's just like, it's truly in hindsight, wow, that was a terrible quality printer.
Yeah.
And it jammed all the time, and it didn't have a removable bed. And actually, even worse, it had an acrylic bed, and sometimes the prints would just pull pieces of the acrylic off.
That was a rep too.
Yeah. It was.
I don't know how I'd know that.
I don't know. Probably the most modding time I spent on that printer was just like trying to replace it with a better bed.
Yeah.
For a while, I actually printed on, of all things, the glass from an iPad 2. Because you could buy it, and it was the early Gorilla Glass, so it was super thin and it was super flexible. And I basically just printed a bracket system where you could just like clip it onto the plate, and it was bigger than the plate, but not by a lot.
Yeah,
and you could print right on that, and then take it off and bend it, and the prints would come off.
now
It would only shatter like 1 out of 20 times.
I mean, that's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that idea. I saw other people do it, but like I implemented my own version of the mount for it because, of course, when someone else does it, why not make your own version?
Why not spend 3 days making it maybe less good?
That is kind of one of the funny things I found. Like as I get older, I am less and less willing to spend multiple days to weeks designing something when I could probably just buy it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
it depends on what it is.
It really does. Is it a problem that I want to solve, or find my own way to solve? If that's yes, I'm gonna do it. But
yeah, I mean, like for example, and I'm totally talking to the wrong person here, Joe, because you've built more than one of your own printer. But like, I'm building that giant plotter now, and my thought before that was to actually build my own printer. And then I was like, there's like 10,000 printers out, like different printer designs out there. It's kind of a solved problem at this point that I really don't need to solve my own way.
I mean, like,
no, that's fair.
It is. To me, building printers is like hot rod dudes building cars.
And that's fair.
Yeah, like hot rods are solved. We know how to make a car go real fast from one end of the racetrack to the other. But you do it in your own way.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And for me, I think a 3D printer, as much as I love them, has become much more of a tool than the thing that I tinker with. Like, that's one of the reasons why I have the printers that I do, is I don't want to tinker with them. I just want them to work when I need to print something and have it print for 3 days straight and be good.
Yeah. That's why I have tool printers and tinker printers.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I mean, that's why, like, I've kind of gone down that road, and I've had the tinkering printers, but in general, I ended up on not wanting to do that. Then when it comes to things like lasers, that's when I have my platforms to tinker on, and I want to, muck about with it. So, yeah.
What else do you guys got for Adam?
I'm a dud tonight, man. I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, we're at an hour. Like we've bullshitted for an hour. So, like this is podcast end time. It's fine.
Fair enough.
It's fine.
I can still keep going for another 2 hours, but I actually really want to work on stuff tonight too. So,
I would love to have you on just to like shoot the shit sometime. Just to like.
Do we say that to every guest?
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah.
We have so many people.
Well,
they've come on to do this, and then we're like, you should just come back to hang out some episode.
I did feel good about that comment for a second until Joe ruined it.
That is the truth. I mean, we don't bring guests on that we don't like. So
that's fair.
I mean, that's legitimate. If I have to sit here for an hour and just listen, I want it to be at least somebody who's interesting and I like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anyone on the show that I didn't want to go drink with or like just hang out and eat pizza and bullshit for 3 hours. So yeah. So yeah, you should feel good about that.
Okay, well that's good. I do feel better now.
You're in an elite club.
Hey, look.
Let's just leave it at club.
What was that?
We'll just leave it at club.
Oh, okay. Just not
It's
not
a
elite.
club.
I mean, it's fine. Like, look, I will take
Select.
anything I can do to get to socialize with people because the last 3 months have been. It's weird. I've never discovered so much of how much of like the extrovert that I actually am, as I have in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, I really need to talk to some people because I'm going to go crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's legitimately a thing.
I just figured out that I'm truly an introvert because I've been fine.
I mean, I'm a lot more fine than a lot of people are.
Yes.
I can generally be left with my own devices. I just kind of work on my own things, but I do enjoy like actually talking to people, and
Yeah.
I do go a little bit crazy if I don't.
I definitely am there. How is that working for you? Because you work from home.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the funny thing about that. I had never worked from home full time. I've almost always had jobs where I could work from home whenever I wanted. And if I didn't show up into the office for a week, as long as they had seen me on some video conference, no one cared. Because like Red Hat, they don't care where you are. And like my last team there, literally I was the only person at that office. So whether or not I was home or at the office, no one cared except for the people that I would play board games with at lunch. Which is pretty much the only reason I went to the office.
Okay.
That and maybe the free snacks. But I had like the weirdest set of circumstances in that I started with Lightburn full time on March 1st and transitioned that day to move to working full time from home. And then 2 weeks later, everyone's working from home. And literally, like, I say this at least from the standpoint of Red Hat, because all my friends that still work there, that was like, I think it was almost exactly 2 weeks later that they're like, okay, everyone needs to work from home now. So they were all scrambling, but I had been setting up for, an at-home office for 2 months. So I've got, my nice comfy Herman Miller chair, and I've got my big screens, and fortunately my wife and I get along really, really well.
That is
It's
important.
a plus.
Yeah, not always the case with everyone, but, after 13 years of being together, we still, actually enjoy each other's company, seeing each other every day.
Yeah.
Which was weird, too, because, like, I'm a very early riser. I would usually be in the office by 7 a.m. So we wouldn't even see each other until I got home, which was early, admittedly, because I was in the office at 7 a.m. But,
What's it like being an early riser? I've never experienced that.
You miss a lot of traffic, which is nice. And this is one of the reasons I did it. Not that the traffic in Raleigh is that bad, but it was the difference between a 20-minute and a 30-minute drive, which is not huge, but it's 20 minutes of my day that I get back.
Yeah.
Mind you, I get all of that back now because I haven't even filled up with gas in 3 months. But yeah, my wife just said to me this evening, she's like, because she went to go get some prescriptions or something, and said, "Yeah, the gas light finally went on my car since March." It's just weird. So saving money with that, but being an early riser is nice because I get a lot of stuff done. Especially, this is less of an issue now because I talk to Jason like a couple times a week for the most part. We just kind of do our own things and I get my code done. But like when I worked at Red Hat or any other job, the like 7 to 9:30 was the only time I really got like real solid coding in a lot of times because after that everyone would be bugging me and I'd have meetings or whatever. Or like for a while I worked at EMC and I had 3 junior devs that basically worked for me. I wasn't technically their manager, but they reported up to me. And from the moment they came in, I didn't have any peace. Don't get me wrong, they were great people, but they were all like straight out of college, and it was like, well, what do I do in this? What do I do in this? They were always asking me questions. So it was like I would get in early, and I'd get like 2 to 3 hours of just like hardcore programming where no one was bugging me. So
yeah, that makes perfect
That's kind
sense.
of been the best part of it. But I'm also weird because, as you'll know, I mean, it's not as late for you guys because you're in Central Time, but it's 12:30 in the morning for me. And this is not uncommon, so I only sleep like 6 hours.
And what's that like?
I have a lot more time in my day. I mean, I sleep more now that I'm working from home full time because I don't have to get up and like miss traffic and stuff. And tomorrow I'll probably sleep late. But I, for most of my life, have been able to, go to bed at 12, 1 o'clock, wake up at 6.
Damn.
And like be fine.
I mean, I do it, but I'm not fine.
Yeah.
But like,
We were out till
I am
1:30
as I'm
last
approaching
night.
my 40s, I am less fine. But
We were out to like 1:30 last night at Joe's for a bonfire, and then
it was socially
My daughter woke us
distanced.
up at
Everybody's chairs, we couldn't touch each other.
it was.
okay.
So my daughter woke us up at 6 this morning, and I was miserable all day.
Yeah. See, the only I was gonna say the only ones that would wake me up are my cats, but my cats are jerks and they sleep in their crates at night, so they don't wake me up.
Fair enough.
And before anyone who's an animal lover tries to yell at me, they have been doing that since they were kittens. And when it's bedtime, they run in their crates. Like that's their happy place.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Crate training's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're fine with it. I mean, they're like 8 and 9. So like,
oh, wow.
It's not like, I mean, they're old cats now. It's not like they're still kittens, but otherwise they will wake us up. But yeah, I don't have to wake up, but like, if I slept until like 8:30, my wife would probably wonder if I was dead. It's happened more so recently, I'll admit, because times are weird.
Yeah.
But
when I get up,
there's been times in my life where like, if I like, even when I was a kid, if I slept until 8:30, 9 o'clock, my parents were waking me up. It's like, what is wrong with you?
Huh? Crazy.
Yeah, I'm weird.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right.
Helps me get stuff done.
It does. Yeah, I just stay up all night. That's all I do.
Yeah, if you never go to bed, then you can never wake up too early, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know,
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to open up another rabbit hole, and this episode needs to be over.
Well, it's been fun, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It has been
Absolutely.
super fun. And with that, keep making stuff, guys.
This is the end of the podcast.